Hello, readers. This is R.J. Post, the author of Lion Taming, Dating, and Other Dangerous Endeavors. And today I want to talk to you about one of my early literary influences, kind of the series of books that really got me into reading as a kid, and that would be The Hardy Boys. Yesterday I was out doing some antiquing with my daughter Kayla, and we actually ran across several copies of books, early editions of the series, and there are a number of ways that you can tell what are the earlier, more collectible editions if you're into that sort of thing, and I'll go over those in a moment. But first I want to talk a little bit about how the Hardy Boys and other books like Nancy Drew, Tom Swift, you've probably heard of some of those titles, how those books were actually created. And it's not the normal process you think about with writing. These books were actually created by a book packaging company called the Stratemeyer Syndicate. And they worked with a number of different publishers, including Grosset and Dunlap, to actually publish the books, print the books, get them out there in the marketplace. But what Edward Stratemeyer and later his daughters did, they created these series. They came up with the names, and then they came up with outlines for the various books. They came up with the titles. They came up with the characters, and then they would farm these out to ghostwriters, many of whom were newspaper reporters. Sounds a little familiar to me. Who then actually would flesh that out into a manuscript, send it back to the syndicate, and they'd go through and edit it, and voila, we have a book, and we send them out. Initially, with the Hardy Boys, there were 3 titles that were put out simultaneously, what they used to call a breeder set, so that you go out in the store, you buy one, you like it, you don't have to wait 6 months to a year to buy the next one and get hooked. You go right out and buy the second one and the third one. Now, what I was most familiar with growing up were books that looked like this. And this is the first edition, well, pardon me, the first entry in the series, Book 1, The Tower Treasure. And this looks pretty old and beat up. It actually, interesting here, this book actually belonged to, I probably can't read that, but my older brother, Scott Post. Even has our old address there where we lived in Elyria, Ohio when we were kids. So it's had a lot of love over the years. But this format is actually quite new. This is what's called a picture cover. And the picture covers, the illustration is printed right on the hardback cover. And they started doing these in 1962. So if you find one like that, even if it looks a little beat up like mine does, it's not as old or rare if what you're into is collecting old rare books. But something like this is older. And you can see this is actually a dust jacket that has been put over top of a rather plain hardback cover. So that's what you really want to look for. And the other thing that you want to look for that's interesting is the original text of these books. Because in the 1950s, the Stratemeyer Syndicate set about systematically, sometimes it was entire rewrites of the books, but they went through and they refreshed all the first 38 titles. And they did a variety of different things, like they updated some of the police methods, but they also eliminated some things that, a little bit dodgy, some unflattering characterizations or stereotypes of minorities, and really kind of updated the view of the police. The police aren't viewed very favorably in these old original texts. So since I grew up with the revised text, I frequently like to go out and find the original and just, make some comparisons, see what things were like in the 1930s when these books were written. And the ones that I picked up yesterday, here we've got The Tower Treasure. That is number 1 in the series. Some later ones, number 14, The Hidden Harbor Mystery. Number 26, The Phantom Freighter. Then we have The Secret of Skull Mountain, no dust jacket there. The Clue in the Embers, number 35. And then number 38, The Mystery of Devil's Paw. Those are both a little later in the series. Now, as I said, these were ghost-written by a variety of authors, but the guy who started it all off with The Tower Treasure here was a fellow named Leslie MacFarlane, who was actually a journalist from Canada, but he was also a screenwriter, made some documentary and feature films for the Canadian Film Board, and then later worked for the CBC. And he wrote 22 books in this series, starting with The Tower Treasure and ending with The Phantom Freighter. So he was the one that really set the tone for what the Hardy Boys were like, and their friends, and a lot of what happened in the books. And if you go out and pick up the books today, you can still find ones that look a lot like this out in your bookstore. Brand new printed versions. The covers are sort of glossy now. But most of what you're going to find is the revised text. But Leslie MacFarlane really set the tone for the series. So if one person other than Edward Stratemeyer, the head of the Stratemeyer series, can be said to be the creator of the Hardy Boys, it would probably be Leslie MacFarlane. So, some various ways to tell the age of these books. Obviously, if you've got the picture cover, that's newer. If you've got something that looks like this, you've got one of the older ones. But much more desirable if you can find it with the dust jacket. And, of course, condition is everything. If it's better condition, it's probably going to be worth more, if that's what you're into. For me, I enjoy the art on the covers, but I like to get the original text and see how things have changed over the years with that. Some other things to look for: the end papers are different. You can check how many books are actually listed in the series. That'll give you an indication of when it was made. But of course, you can also check the copyright. And another thing, how many chapters does it have? This one, for instance, has 25 chapters. You're looking at the original text. When these books were revised, starting in 1959, I believe, they made everything more consistent. Everything after that had 20 chapters. So if you pick up a book and it has 20 chapters, it's probably late 50s or later. If it's got 25 chapters, it's probably not only one of the earlier ones in the series, but it's probably the original text. So those are some ways to tell different things. A lot of people, librarians, teachers, whatnot, don't necessarily think the best of the Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, and books of that ilk. They maybe think they're not as literary or scholarly. But the important thing, if you've got kids at home, is to get them reading. And these were really one of the first things that got me reading. And here I am, 40, 50 years later, I'm still reading them. Because, as I said, I'm fascinated by the process of how they were created. I find them relaxing, so they're good to read in the evening. And, it's also nostalgia. But these got me going, and over time I moved into on the mystery realm and the more sophisticated things like Raymond Chandler and Lawrence Block and those kinds of writers. And obviously moved into things like John Steinbeck and William Faulkner and just a whole variety of more literary sort of pursuits. But in my own book, Lion Taming, Dating, and Other Dangerous Endeavors. The story that's probably most influenced by books like The Hardy Boys or Nancy Drew or whatnot is Mystery Girl, which is the book about 4 teenagers trying to solve a mystery. The case of an old movie star that was convicted of murder and whether or not she really did it. There are other stories in the book that are influenced by mystery writers like Raymond Chandler or spy authors like Ian Fleming, but the one that probably owes the most to the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew and whatnot is Mystery Girl. So, a little primer there on what to look for if you're buying these old books. And as I said, the most important thing is that you're reading, whether you're 8 years old or you're 88 years old. And just as a reminder, my own book is available on Amazon in paperback or ebook. And it's also available in 4 retail outlets now: Susan's Books and Gifts in Aurora, Chapters Books and Gifts in Seward, The Bookworm in Omaha, and now the latest location, Francie and Finch in Lincoln. So get out there and find yourself something good to read. Thanks. We'll see you again soon.